Deep beneath the sands of the U.S. Mexico border is a network of dark and sinister tunnels, a twisted labyrinth of steel and concrete, a testament to the ingenuity and determination of those who would stop at nothing to smuggle illicit cargo across the border. There are 62 tunnels of this sort, all commissioned by the same man, serving as a means to transport drugs and help the world's most notorious drug lord evade the law for years. This is the story of Mexico's most dangerous drug kingpin, El Chapo. Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Lora was born on April 4, 1957, to a family in the rural community of La Tuna, Barrio, Sinaloa, Mexico. Born into a life of poverty and hardship, Joaquín's father was a man of many trades, officially a cattle rancher but rumored to be a notorious cultivator of opium. Growing up with an opium cultivator, Joaquín naturally took it up himself, hiking the rugged hills of Badiraguato to cut the buds and stack them in kilos, so his father could sell the harvest to other suppliers in Culiacán and Guamuchil. Just one problem. Joaquín's father was an irresponsible drunk, which meant the family never really had a means of support. Soon enough, the young lad took matters into his own hands and cultivated his own marijuana plantation at the young age of 15. Having some vague concept of business acumen, Joaquín decided to seek his fortune elsewhere, somewhere closer to his uncle Pedro Avilés Pérez, one of the pioneers of Mexican drug trafficking. Joaquín was only in his early 20s when he joined the ruthless world of organized crime. As Joaquín Guzmán entered adolescence, he was given a nickname that would stick forever: El Chapo, a moniker born from the Mexican slang for shorty. Little did they know, this shorty would one day become a towering figure in the criminal underworld. Throughout his early days in organized crime, Guzmán was ambitious and ruthless. He was known for his violent approach to business and would kill anyone who crossed him or failed to deliver on time. He was a man feared by many, but respected by more. In the late 80s, when his boss Félix Gallardo was found and arrested for drug trafficking, Joaquín and his mates decided to divide the areas controlled by Gallardo's cartel and keep to their territories. It was a good idea, certainly an efficient one. It would have worked, too, if El Chapo's old friends didn't have other plans. As Félix Gallardo was brought to justice, a power vacuum emerged in the Tijuana corridor, with the ruthless Arellano Félix brothers vying for control. Guzmán and the leaders of the Sinaloa Cartel were understandably angry about the betrayal, and Guzmán sent his most trusted lieutenant, Armando Lopez, to reason with them. Reason, however, wasn't how they played it. Before Armando could even open his mouth, he was murdered by Ramon Arellano Félix, and his corpse was disposed of like trash on the city's outskirts. A slew of murders ensued at the hands of the brothers, beginning with the murder of the wife and children of one of Guzmán's associates. More than anything, El Chapo had a reputation to uphold. He unleashed his wrath upon the brothers and the unsuspecting citizens of Iguala, and bought out law enforcement with $10 million to keep them from investigating the killings. The war between the two groups continued with no end in sight, and it started to get personal. The first attempt on Guzmán's life was made by this rival cartel at Guadalajara Airport in 1993. Chaos and gunfire erupted as bullets flew, and innocent bystanders were caught in the crossfire. Amid the confusion, well-respected Mexican Cardinal Juan Jesus Posadas Ocampo was caught in the crossfire, while Guzmán made a clean escape to a safe house 20 minutes away. Throughout the turmoil, however, El Chapo's trade thrived. For 3 decades, Joaquín Guzmán reigned supreme as one of Mexico's most ruthless and successful drug lords. His empire of illegal drugs spanned decades as he trafficked nearly 600,000 kilograms of cocaine, worth over $11 billion, 200 kilograms of heroin worth over $11 million, and at least 420,000 kilograms of marijuana worth about $846 million. It was an absurd amount of money, and it allowed him to lead the most luxurious of lifestyles. But his streak wouldn't last long. The year he escaped from the Arellano Félix brothers cartel was the same year the authorities finally caught him at a hotel near Tapachula, between the border of Mexico and Guatemala. Not that the event put a dent in his lifestyle. 1993. Guzmán was finally captured and deported to Mexico aboard a military airplane, after which he was sentenced to 20 years and 9 months on charges of drug trafficking, criminal association, bribery, firearms, and the murder of Cardinal Ocampo. Not that his absence really affected the business. If anything, it might have enhanced it. Even behind bars, Guzman's reign as a drug lord continued, as his associates would bring him suitcases of cash to bribe the prison workers and allow him to maintain his opulent lifestyle. While in prison, he would even ask for Viagra and sex workers to be sent to his cell. And through it all, Guzman stood tall as a ruthless and powerful force in the criminal underworld, a man not to be underestimated or crossed. Having had his fill of prison life for 8 years, it was time to get back to work. On January 19, 2001, Francisco Camberos Rivera, a prison guard, unlocked Guzman's cell. Guzman, with the help of a laundry cart and a willing maintenance worker, slipped out of the prison and into the night. It's not as simple as it sounds, though. El Chapo's escape involved corruption and bribery, and the entire operation is said to have cost him $2.5 million. And the one prison guard who dared to speak out against the corruption disappeared without a trace. A manhunt ensued for the next 13 years, with a few close calls in between. The first happened soon after the escape, when the Mexican army received a tip that El Chapo was throwing a grand party in his home. As the military raced to intercept him, helicopters descended on his property, and they were greeted by nothing. The kingpin had escaped long before and essentially disappeared. The next close call happened in 2007, when Guzman threw a lavish wedding celebration for himself and his 18-year-old bride, Emma Coronel. It would have been the perfect time to catch all corrupt officials and El Chapo himself in one location, in theory. By the time the army arrived, Guzman had fled once again. Finally, in 2012, law enforcement officials were able to track his location through his BlackBerry, and the DEA passed on this information to the Mexican troops. A raid was arranged for the city of Los Cabos, but Guzman once again escaped through the back door of his mansion, having ditched his phone with one of his associates. It wasn't until 2014 that he was captured for the second time. After more Mexican cartel wars and conflict with the Beltran-Leyva cartel, the Mexican authorities closed in on the location of his hideout in the Sierra Madre Mountains. He still managed to escape through a network of secret tunnels, but was finally captured for a second time at a hotel in Mazatlan. This time, though, Guzman didn't stick around for long. He knew his way around and had refined his escape to an art form. These were the last moments of Guzman in his cell, pacing up and down before he'd duck out of the camera's view and escape through a marvelously constructed tunnel. The break was all over the news. How he pulled it off, slipping right past the watchful eyes of guards and security cameras. But even more impressive than the escape was the tunnel, dug 10 meters deep. It was a sophisticated masterpiece of engineering, complete with electricity and air ducts. Guzman went down a ladder to the bottom of the tunnel and fled on a motorbike kept ready for him there, emerging 1.5 kilometers away from an exit concealed by a construction site. This escape, of course, set off a second nationwide manhunt. The Mexican government immediately put up checkpoints and conducted air searches by helicopter in the surrounding area, while also putting the entire prison on lockdown. A $3.8 million bounty was placed for information on El Chapo, while the world chided Mexican President Peña Nieto for his negligence in the high levels of corruption in the system. Did these lockdowns matter? Did it, in the end, cause even the slightest dent in El Chapo's operations, movement, or lifestyle? No, it did not. In fact, there were more close calls in the months that followed, and he escaped all of them, either through trickery or through his vast network of tunnels. During this time, he still openly met with popular figures and celebrities, almost flaunting his freedom. And this would turn out to be his downfall. Had Guzman stayed low-key after his escape, he probably would have been all right. Instead, he made the grave mistake of granting an exclusive interview to Hollywood actor Penn. It was an unprecedented move that would ultimately cost him his freedom. In the interview, Guzman bragged about his fleet of submarines, airplanes, trucks, and boats. Ultimately, that interview became Attorney General Arlai Gomez's opportunity to launch a new line of investigation. El Chapo's narcissism and desire to commission screenplays about his life proved to be the end of his story. In January 2016, he was tracked down to a house in an affluent part of Los Mochis in northern Sinaloa. 5 of his guards were killed in the raid by Mexican Marines, and he managed to flee through a manhole but was caught in a car while leaving town. 1 year later, he was extradited to the United States to face charges. The once untouchable kingpin's downfall was a result of his own hubris. as his desire for fame and glory ultimately led to his capture. But how long will he really stay imprisoned? The legacy of Joaquín El Chapo Guzman is a complex one. From humble beginnings, Guzman built an empire that controlled a significant portion of the international drug trade, becoming one of the most feared figures in history. He managed to evade capture for over a decade and run an uber-successful drug empire, pulling the wool over the eyes of Mexican and American authorities constantly. He was untouchable until he wasn't. In the end, it took El Chapo to bring down El Chapo. If you like this content, subscribe for more such videos.